Hello, my name is Rob Edwards. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And today it's the start of January 2020. New Doctor Who has begun, and I am not here to talk about it because, sadly, it may have begun in the UK, but I am not in the UK. I am in Finland, and we don't get new Doctor Who until the 9th of January. I get 2 episodes then, but until that time, the only new things I know about Doctor Who are the major spoilers for episode 1. Because, thanks YouTube Doctor Who, you have managed to have 3 videos on your YouTube channel, which, if you look at all 3 of those titles, and I wasn't seeking them out, they just popped up on my recommendeds, essentially, combining those 3, let me know what the major spoiler is at the end of episode 1. So, yay. That's slightly disappointing. So, I couldn't talk about Doctor Who today, but I did want to get to in front of the camera and do some more talking about it, because I enjoyed my Rise of Skywalker review, so I thought I'd get in front of it and talk about The Witcher. Now, my background with The Witcher is not extensive. I've got friends who've raved about it over the years, but I personally have never read any of the books. In fact, I wasn't even sure there were books until I did some more research for this video. And I've never played any of the computer games. I have seen the sort of box art for The Witcher because, I've got Steam and it pops up on my library every now and then, or I've been to a video game store or something. But really, that's about all I knew about the franchise going in. But my wife and I, we sat down and watched all of season 1 of The Witcher, and I want to talk about, well, as I do with my Doctor Who reviews really, the stuff that really worked for me, the stuff that didn't work for me quite as well, and my general overall sense of the show. Let's start with my general feelings about the show, and then I'll get into spoilers later on. But I can't imagine most people watching this video would watch it without having seen the show themselves. So, generally, I liked it, I think. I'm a bit unconvinced about some of the elements of the show. I thought that the special effects, while generally good, were a little bit ropey in a few places and could have done with a few more weeks of render time on some of the monsters in particular, particularly some of the more humanoid monsters whose faces looked very kind of doughy and plasticky. But otherwise, I thought the production values of the show were pretty high. I thought that the fantasy setting reminded me a bit of Xena and Hercules, but kind of updated for the 21st century. And the characters are generally interesting. I thought, I say the characters are generally interesting. I thought the characters of Yennefer and Ciri were interesting. I thought the character of Geralt was engaging. I actually really liked Henry Cavill's performance as Geralt. But I don't know that we really saw enough about him in the show The Witcher to really connect with that character. He remains something of a blank, something of a cipher. And even the few snatches of the Witcher background that we got, and what goes into creating a Witcher and where they come from, I don't know that the show really does enough to build that up for me. In fact, actually, I thought the world building of The Witcher Season 1 was one of its poorer elements. There are a lot of fantasy names in this show, a lot of them, and they come thick and fast, and actually trying to keep track of what all the countries in question were, or what all the names of the characters were. I still don't know the name of the bard character that follows Geralt around. I have a vague idea that in the computer games or the books he's called Dandelion, but I'm fairly sure that we didn't hear that name in the show, but I couldn't tell you what the name of the bard character is, which is a shame because he was probably one of my favourite bits of the series. So it just... it just didn't quite gel for me. That said, there were some things which the show did really, really well. I thought the fight choreography was brilliant. Difficult to say, but brilliant. I thought that what it does with the interweaving of the three sort of main plot lines, Yennefer and Geralt and Ciri, were really, really interesting. And we'll get into the spoilers in a moment, but when I realised what they were doing, that really did perk up my interest in the show. I was kind of, the first couple of episodes, I was kind of going, okay, it's watchable. I can enjoy letting it kind of wash over me. But when they did that turning, kind of, was it episode 3? Sort of episode 3, 4, where you realise that there's something more going on than it first looked. That really perked my interest up, and it's what actually got me to the end of the series. Other than the fact, it was a long Christmas period and we had nothing better to watch on TV. So yeah, I liked it. I'm not raving about it. I thought the magic system was quite interesting. I thought the few glimpses we got of the Witcher power set was quite interesting. But really, this was. Do you know what? Actually, that is probably the main thought to take away for me. The thing that this series was a really good prologue to the series I want to see, which is season 2. Or, to put it in Henry Cavill as Geralt might say, does that a lot. So let's talk some spoilers. Let's talk about some specifics then. And I want to talk about the characters, and I talk about them kind of in order of my favourites to my least engaging. So my favourite character, as I said, I think was the Bard. And I just do slightly worry when the favourite character in a show is the comic relief character, and wasn't, in every episode. But whenever he was on screen, it was a breath of fresh air. I still regret not knowing his name, but he was a lot of fun, had quite a good voice, and I enjoyed his scenes. Of the main cast, of the cast that are really kind of the protagonists of the show, my favourite by far was Yennefer. I thought we got enough about her background and her story to really understand the character. And I think that, the really interesting idea that, where she's come from, she's very much made herself what she is in her struggles, but has paid a price for her journey, and very much regrets that price and is trying to find a way to... she chose the magical surgeon, as she's having her transformation, tells her essentially that she won't be able to have children, and she says, basically just get on with it, and comes to realise that is probably the thing that she wants most of all in the world, and she made the decision for it not to be an option for her. And I think that's really interesting. It really grounds the character in amongst all this weird mystical stuff that surrounds her. That is quite a strong, believable through line for her motivation, which I think makes her for a really interesting character. Her biggest episode in sort of fully formed mage form, I guess, is the final episode. And that, sadly, I think is where she's at her weakest, because the show does this a lot. It puts a lot of stuff, a lot of flash and bang and whiz and kapow on screen, but doesn't underpin it with any kind of explanation about what's going on. So there's a strange bit where they throw a pot of these black wiggly worms into the enemy names in this show. One of the evil mages throws a pot of these black wiggly worms, which I think are mind control-y type things, because I think you see one later in one of the other friendly mages, just as she's doing a big betrayal. Don't ask me the name, I don't know any of them. But, you don't really get much background on that, and why she's doing it, and who she's... And just... There's lots of spectacle, and it's impressive, and it looks great, and it's a tense battle scene, but I would like to understand more of what's going on. Now, on one level, that's great. That means, I'm invested in for the future, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to get next. But at the same time, I come away from season 1 really unsatisfied with the elements which really interested me the most have the least information about them. Of the main cast, I think Geralt is the next most interesting character. I really like Cavill's performance, as I mentioned in the non-spoiler stuff. I really liked his look. I like the fact that he's got these weird potions that he takes that seem to have different effects, and sometimes he has this sort of yellowy cat eye things, and other times he has the sort of dark scarring around his face. It's really interesting. He does lose his sword a lot, and we saw in 2 or 3 different episodes the same thing where he's been caught by the monster and his sword's over there and he's reaching for it, and we get a shot of his hand near the... It's perfectly fine thing to do in the choreography of a fight, but to go to that well 2 or 3 times in season 1, it's interesting. It worries me slightly. And the other character, Ciri, very interesting, very trusting, but again a bit of a blank slate. She is unformed. She is yet to be the person she needs to be. It's really interesting the way that she is, she starts with this life of privilege, and by the end she's stealing people's horses, and that is a really interesting path for her. But I don't know that she has formed as the character she will be for future seasons yet. I think she's still very much a work in progress, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm interested to see where she goes next, but it means that I can't completely connect with her, because I know that there is more to come. I know that there are developments for her. Now, I did knock the show for its world building a little bit earlier on, but I want to sort of correct that a little bit, because there are elements in here which are strong. The sort of wizard school thing that we see, very interesting. The politics of the mages, I really liked the fact that they seem to be sending out mages to each of the countries to try and put a hand on the tiller, as it were. I like that a lot. And the interweaving of the plot lines with the 3 different timelines is very, very clever and has some interesting implications. And when we realise that Geralt was actually there at the fall of the city in episode 1, just wasn't able to get to Ciri for that, I thought it was very clever, very interesting way of framing this conflict. I really liked that. And so that's what got me to the end of the season. That's what really pulled me and engaged me throughout. The realization that we had 3 different timelines going on, and wondering what the implications for that might be. So that, I think I've rambled enough now. That's probably enough for now. Join me again next week when I will be back to talk about Doctor Who, despite being spoiled on episode 1. So I'll probably record that Friday next week on the 10th. Might be even later than that. But anyway, there will be some Doctor Who content coming from me really soon. So stick around for that. If you watched The Witcher and enjoyed it or didn't, why not put a comment? I'm leaving these as comment sections available for people to. So if you've got something to say, jolly well say it down in the comment section, or whatever. I don't know. Likes, subscribes. That's YouTube stuff. Good. More videos from me. Subscribe to me. Me. Witchers. Marvellous. Cheerio.